In the 2012 election, super PACs raised $772 million through just over 21,000 donors. However, $447 million of these dollars came from just the top 100 donors for these federal elections. This is due to Citizens United versus the Federal Election Committee, which was a court case that was ruled on in 2010, which qualified corporations and unions to be represented as people and them donating to politicians as their right, which allowed for businessmen to bypass certain restrictions in order to give as much money as they wanted to certain politicians, which has created a problem in terms of big money in politics. That's one of the hot button phrases nowadays, and Citizens United is the kind of the foundation of that issue. Our campaign finance laws are in need of reform. It's very clear to see. And when these reforms are made, eventually, there will be a brighter future in store without a doubt. As I said before, Citizens United upholded freedom of speech for corporations and unions. Super PACs are now in the best interest of the wealthy, even though at the time when they were formed, they were meant to be formed for special interest groups that could raise money for their cause and then support candidates or multiple different candidates instead of just one. Now, however, the system is you form a super PAC for a candidate and raise as much money as you can, which creates some kind of a never-ending series of wealth for these candidates. Since 2010, 60% of just over $1 billion that has been raised for political campaigns has been given by just 195 people. For example, the Koch brothers, I don't know if you've heard of them before, just in the last election year, 2014, they donated just under $500 million of their own personal money to finance certain congressmen, and that's where you get the term like a congressman is in somebody's pocket, is when they finance certain Congress people's campaigns. And while a lot of people don't think that big money wins campaigns, Gallup polls found that 93% of campaigns that have been won, or campaigns have been won by people that have raised the most money. That's been since 2008, and actually 9 of the last 10 presidents elected did win in terms of monetary donations. 9 of the last 10 presidents who were leading in monetary donations did win the general election as well. Now that you guys can see that there is an issue in terms of big money in politics, it's kind of time to move on to what maybe we could do to reform these issues. Overturning Citizens United would be the first step in a long line of things that would need to be done to start reforming federal campaign funds. Buying politicians leads to these politicians not caring about their constituents, really not doing their job. When these people are financed by big corporations, they're not keeping in mind the best interests of the people that they're supposed to be serving. By cutting Citizens United and overturning it, it would allow for individuals to gain more representation by their own congressmen, which would in turn help the entire U.S. political system as it is. Also, if you look at many European countries, they do have some sort of reform in terms of spending limits or raising limits on how much you can raise in terms of a political campaign. For example, in United Kingdom, they cap spending at $29.5 million per year for elections. To put that in perspective, Hillary Clinton raised $29.5 million in just under 2 months of campaigning. And she spent that in just a month, according to U.S. News. Being able to put a cap on these sort of things would create less of a demand to raise money, which would mean less politicians pandering to the highest bidder kind of type thing. I mean, I know you guys are all of voting age and you all pay somewhat attention to politics, and it's pretty clear that a lot of the times politicians are pandering to the highest donor and kind of selling themselves out, especially with this presidential race heating up. It's becoming very, very evident. Once these reforms are made, there will be a brighter future. I can guarantee you that. The U.S. has been kind of been the embodiment of bad politics in the eyes of the rest of the world for the last 10 to 15 years. The way our political system is run and the brokenness of it currently is kind of a laughingstock. Actually, in the United Kingdom, according to the London Times, they regarded in the EU as one of the most broken political campaign systems in the world. And this should actually resonate a lot more than it does with the general public. To me, America is the greatest country in the world. I'd like to believe that, but in reality, that's not the truth anymore. And one of the biggest issues is that our political system is broken, and the key to fixing that brokenness in the system is to fix campaign finance laws. Like I said before, the only other issue with big money in politics is that it diminishes how much say the common person has in voting. The system that was arranged by our founding fathers, you guys would have the same amount of pull in politics as someone who was 35 and making 3 times as much money as you are. That's clearly not the case today. And as the Constitution states, we the people, not we the people that can afford it. So being able to put the representativeness of our Congress back into the general public should be a goal for many people to have, and ultimately is the reason that campaign finance reform is extremely important. In summary, going over the issues, there is very clearly a problem. I think that's very clear to see that there is an issue that needs to be resolved. And through reforms such as disbanding the decision on Citizens United, as well as implementing laws in order to restrict campaign finances, the United States can start building itself back up to its former glory of one of the greatest countries in the world again. And you may be wondering, how can I help? I'm just kind of a lowly college student who really doesn't have much of a say. You have the right as a citizen of this country to write your politicians, your congressmen, your senators. And I actually wrote mine just a couple weeks ago about a separate issue, and he responded within the week. I encourage you guys to reach out to your politicians, write him a letter, send him an email, some sort of thing to let him know that you are interested, because the more that the general population shows interest, the sooner this issue will be fixed. Thank you guys for your time.